Greetings. This is the one you've known as Jesus the Christ. Let's talk about happiness. It isn't found in safety, security, money, comfort, or any of the usual egoic goals. All the things the ego drives you to acquire aren't really it. They don't really satisfy. What satisfies is living the life you're meant to live, being who you came here to be. Do you know what that is yet? Do you know what you want? Do you know what makes your heart happy? What good is it to overcome your fears around failure if all you get for it is material success? The false self can be healed, and that healing can lead to either a more successful ego or a more successful human being. You are a human being. You are meant to discover your beingness, your wholeness, true happiness. A fear of failure can interfere with that, but so can pursuing success for its own sake. The fear of failure and the desire for success are two sides of the same coin. They result in the same thing, a lack of fulfillment, which isn't the result people expect when they go after success. They assume they'll also get fulfillment and happiness. But do they? Inherent in the idea of success is happiness. What is success without happiness? It's empty indeed. If success doesn't bring you happiness, then what does? The good news is that with or without success in the worldly sense, you can be happy. In fact, worldly success often interferes with finding true happiness, since you have only so much time and energy to give to your goals. What do you really want? I'm guessing that you want true happiness. What is that? Those who've found true happiness know what it is. They know it when they've found it because there's a sense of coming home, finally, once and for all. You know that this is what you've been looking for, what you've been wanting all along. It's possible that you don't know what that feels like, and so you may settle for something less than that. Keep going. Keep searching for true happiness until you find it. True happiness is also a feeling of love, which is a sense of arriving home, of belonging, of being at peace and being embraced by life, of being love and being loved. This is the ultimate. It doesn't get any better than this. So how do you get it? True happiness is not something you get in the usual way. While the ego's happiness is something you strive to get, with true happiness there's no striving, but just the opposite, resting. Finally you can rest, because you've arrived at your destination, and you know it. Finally you can just be. The experience of true happiness is resting, and the way to get true happiness is by just resting, just being. All that doing, striving, and becoming were the false self's way of trying to find happiness, when true happiness was here all along. Happiness has been here all along in just being who you are, without all the false self's ideas, beliefs, desires, and fears. You surrender those, you give them up, and what you get in exchange is true happiness, peace, and a sense of fullness, completeness, contentment. How funny that this happiness is achieved by not doing the usual things the ego does to get happy, by stopping and just being. This is something the ego doesn't ever suggest you do. It suggests a lot of solutions to the unhappiness it creates, but just being isn't one of them. That's because the ego disappears when you let yourself just be without any agenda. You don't need to be successful, beautiful, powerful, or rich. Being something or somebody is so much work, so exhausting, and ultimately not fulfilling. When you're so busy trying to be those things, there's no time left over to just be, to rest as being, to be nobody, your true self. When you drop all ideas about who you are, you experience who you really are. The ego doesn't really want you to do that. It's in the business of keeping you running in circles, involved with it. Concepts like success and failure belong to the false self and are a way the ego keeps you involved with it. There's no such thing as success or failure or any other concept. You can never become a concept, such as successful. You will never get there because concepts are imaginary, and the ego is always moving the goalposts. Concepts are the clothing the false self puts on. They give life to the false self, and so they naturally interfere with experiencing the perfection of your true self. But that's the ego's plan, to get you to try to be somebody it imagines you should be. Yes, the ego has a plan. It's designed to maintain itself. That may sound nefarious, and maybe it is, but the ego is what it is, and it must be accepted. Once you know this about the ego, though, the ego loses the power to drive you in directions that aren't satisfying. How can trying to be somebody you can never be satisfying or make you happy? It's like chasing after a mirage. The mirage remains out of reach, no matter what you do. Who is the you that can choose the ego's goals or something else? Who is it that is taking this in and evaluating its truth? Who is it that already knows the truth about happiness and the truth I'm speaking about? Within your being, you know the truth, and you know what true happiness feels like. It's as if you've forgotten and you're waking up to remembering the truth. You got lost in the dream of the ego, in the illusory world of, I have to have this or else. You bought into those lies, but lies can't be maintained forever before they're seen as lies. Eventually, they're unmasked. It's time for you to discover the lies your mind has been telling you and to free yourself from them. You become free from the lies simply by seeing that they're lies. That's all. Then you're free to discover what's true, to look more deeply into the truth. Who are you really? Are you the person who's struggling, striving, and never good enough, who has to have something to be happy? Or are you what is aware of all that striving and never being happy? What is this that is aware like? Is there striving in this that is aware, in this awareness? Or is there just awareness? What is that awareness like? Isn't it simple, uncomplicated, undefinable, silent, at peace? That subtle sense of awareness, which is so easily overlooked, is who you really are. You're not the character you're observing. You're what is observing the character. The character is the false self, created by thoughts about yourself. But who you really are, that which is aware of the character, has no thoughts whatsoever, but is simply aware and experiencing whatever you're experiencing, without reactions, opinions, judgments, or stories, such as, "I'm a failure." The true self is simply existence. I am, with nothing further defining that. This awareness allows and accepts whatever's happening within and around the character. It is a kind, compassionate bystander who is in love with life and whatever experience it's having, although it isn't actually a who or an it. For most people, this awareness disappears in deep sleep and arises again in waking consciousness. But it is there all along, until death, when it leaves the body. This awareness is what animates the body, is conscious of experience, and registers experiences. When it withdraws from the body at death, the body is left behind, like an empty shell, and the consciousness continues in other dimensions. This is who you really are. It uses the mind to function, but it isn't what thinks. There is no thinker. Thoughts happen, but they aren't happening to anyone. It seems that they are your thoughts, that you are thinking them, but that you is the false self, nothing real. Who you really are is pure awareness, which has other names according to its qualities: love, peace, stillness, silence, nothingness, emptiness. Awareness is the life force that animates the body-mind. Who you are is this life force, which is aware and experiences life. It isn't contained inside the body, nor does it exist outside the body. It exists nowhere and everywhere. It is the same life force that is enlivening and interpenetrating all of life. It is God. I am but a messenger of the truth, no more God than you are. But I have realized the immanence of God more than most on earth have. I do not want your worship or adoration. What I want is for you to realize your own godhood and to worship and celebrate life with me. That is your destiny. I may have arrived at this destiny a little sooner than you, but that means nothing. There is no hierarchy in oneness. We all come from and embody the same stuff, divine essence. To return to our subject, what is success to you? How would it be measured? What would it look like? What would it feel like? The answer to this would be different from person to person, and even different at different points in your own life. Your definition of success is always changing. Whose definition is it? And who is changing it? You think that it's your definition, and that you change it. But who is this you? Did you wake up one day and decide to change your definition of success? These thoughts, these definitions of success, and every other concept aren't decided by you, but arise in you and to you. They just happen. Thoughts happen. Where do they come from? They seem to come from you, but it's easy to see that you had nothing to do with their arising. If you don't know where they came from, can they be trusted? Usually you need to know the source of something before you know if it's trustworthy or not. If you don't know where they came from, can they be trusted? Usually you need to know the source of something before you know if it's trustworthy or not. You don't know the source, So you don't know if your thoughts are trustworthy. You just assume they are. Who assumes they're trustworthy? Once you start questioning such assumptions about the mind, the house of cards that is the false self begins to crumble. The false self can't stand up to scrutiny, so to be maintained, the ego must keep you from scrutinizing it. It does this mostly through fear. The false self is held in place through fear. If someone were yelling fire, you wouldn't stop and question that person. You'd just respond. This is one of the ways the ego keeps you from questioning the thoughts that arise. The voice in your head yells fire a lot. The ego also keeps you from scrutinizing your thoughts by presenting you with thoughts that have a sense of there being a problem, and by speaking authoritatively about how to solve those problems. If someone came to you and said, "We have a problem, but I know how to fix it," you'd probably say, "Okay, what's your solution?" And you'd listen to it, especially if that person spoke with authority. Speaking with authority is something the ego does very well. Do you need to question someone who's in authority? Common sense says you don't. So you are conned by your own mind because you are trusting. You trust your mind. You trust it more than anything else because that's your default as a human being. When your egoic mind tells you that material success or being beautiful or being powerful is the way to happiness, you believe it. And then it tells you how to achieve that. Since everyone else is also listening to the voice in their head and it's saying similar things, its advice seems trustworthy. But this is a case of the blind leading the blind. Everyone is believing the same con man, and many are afraid to question this, to question the way everyone else is living. Who are you to question how everyone else is living? Exactly. Who are you? Thankfully, there have always been those who've questioned conventional thinking, and who've had the courage to declare that the emperor has no clothes. It takes courage to question, and it takes courage to go against the crowd. But what's the alternative? Without questioning, humanity is lost to suffering, lost to the ego's foolish guidance. But this is not to be humanity's fate. Life is more benevolent than that. Human beings may have been dealt a difficult hand, but winning is still possible, indeed inevitable. But it will take some clear seeing. Each of you has been given the courage and clear seeing you need to find your way to true happiness. That is how benevolent life is, and that is your destiny. Winning at life is like winning any game. You have to be clever. You have to think outside the box. You have to be willing to take risks and be different and ask questions. Those who become successful in the truest sense of the word are those who've seen through the lies of the egoic mind. They are successful because what they've gained as a result of their questioning is the ultimate prize: happiness, peace, contentment, and love. Failure to see the truth, to see the lies, results in suffering, and suffering eventually leads to seeing the truth. So you can't help but succeed in the game of life. It's designed to help you see the truth. Seeing the truth about life is the only real success, and now you've seen it. Now all you have to do is continue to realize the truth in each moment. If you fail in one moment, life gives you another chance in the next moment. Through so-called failure, which is just life in its kindness, shaping you and pointing you toward love and peace, you get better and better at seeing through the mind until you're never fooled again. And that is enlightenment, the greatest success story of all. Thank you for being here. I am with you always.